Hi everyone, welcome. What we have here in front of us is my tub of African night crawlers. Got some information about them here on this board. The bin is now 133 days of age. That's 19 weeks. It's been 13 days now since the system was last fed, and that feeding was its 13th feeding overall. And the first two feedings were not done in this so-called lasagna style. They were just conventional feedings. But the last 11 feedings have been done in this sort of stacked, layered lasagna style, and I'm, kind of scribbling in this so far thing in here in the hopes that maybe we can continue with it a little longer, even though we've kind of decided that we're going to withhold the addition of any new bedding, so that means we're not going to be putting any new fresh layers of cardboard in here with which to establish one of these lasagna layers or anything. We're just going to keep trying to reuse what we've got in here already. There are a couple pieces of cardboard that were still intact last time we checked in here 13 days ago. I've even thought about maybe using this piece of paper here, which is, wow, definitely getting worked at this point. I thought it might be something that we could sort of fudge into the layers, since it kind of has that layerish kind of appearance to it, although at this point it looks more like confetti. But perhaps if we can flip it over onto the more intact side, it'll help it keep together as a single object, but I doubt that we can keep using it as a as a top covering anymore. Now, I don't know, I'm not a biologist or a worm expert. I just play with worms on TV, but the clitellum on this worm right here on the surface looks so bulged, and it makes me wonder if that could be, oops, sorry, didn't mean to scare the little guy away. Just made me wonder if it could have been a cocoon ready to be deposited into the system here. The coffee in my kitchen is starting to pile up. I've got a couple days worth, and I'd really like to do away with it. So my idea was to add that coffee today, but I don't know, when we last fed this bin 13 days ago, it had gone through a 3+ week pause between feedings. Because in that case too, we had gone back into that bin after 2 weeks and found that there was just so much leftovers. In that case, I think there was just a bunch of leftover apple slices that it just didn't seem to make sense to add more food at that time. So we just sort of reconstructed all the layers at that time and skipped feeding. But when we were in here last time, when we put the chestnuts in, another thing that we put in here was a whole bunch of sifted out bits of paper, bedding material that had been mixed in with the finished compost in one of the systems that I had bought to a finish recently. So before putting those castings into storage, I ran that whole batch of material through my screen, and all the little bits and pieces of paper that we collected were thrown in here as bedding to accompany the last feeding. So even though we've been wanting to help steer this system towards harvest gradually, we did add a good amount of bedding last time. I'm happy to see that everything around the edges appears to be in pretty decent shape. I didn't dig all the way down to the bottom. I just wanted to make sure there's no dryness happening anywhere. That plastic bag is doing a great job holding the moisture down within the system. All kinds of nice castings everywhere, but also a good bit of bits of pieces of paper. I'm not sure how deep we have to get to find some of that stuff that we threw in here, but it looked just like that, and there was a whole bunch of it. I think we had mixed it in at the very bottom with that bottom layer of just sort of leftovers, all kinds of bits of asparagus and apple bits and anything else that was leftovers from previous feeding, all got mushed together into this pasty, gooey, leftover concoction that made up the bottom layer, into which we mixed a whole bunch of that small granular paper bits. And then higher up, I think we used it as what was left. We had a good bit, so we used up more of it up higher when we built up the the layer where we had placed in the chestnuts. I'm wondering if this is like, this is probably one of the tea bags. There was a point where we had thrown tea bags into the system, and I was prepared to start fishing them out and get rid of them because I didn't think they were breaking down, but this does look like it's fading away. I'll hold it up and the light just comes through it like it's nothing. It's really far gone. This is some sort of fibrous veggie. This is probably another tea bag. So I guess I must have actually collected some of this stuff together and grouped it together for easy finding at some point in the future. But to me, that's more bedding type material, I suppose. These bags, these tea bags. I guess this fibrous leftover, it's more of a food, a leftover. We'll just throw that stuff off to the side, I guess. But let's really get down into here and see what the heck is going on, because I'm curious to see how those chestnuts are coming along. There is one other system where I added chestnuts about the same quantity as we put in here, and when we checked in on that system after 10 days, the chestnuts appeared to be pretty popular. A lot of worms had come out for them. And here, 13 days later, I'm wondering if the worms are equally jazzed by this stuff. Wow, look at that. They like it. I guess, in a bin like this, there's kind of slim pickings for anything else anymore. The previous feeding of apple bits was in here for 24 days, and it was already leftovers at that point, I think. Or maybe it was the apple put in fresh at that point? I can't remember. So then, yeah, this stuff is definitely breaking apart. I did think that it might make good sense to help break these chunks apart, because they are pretty good in size. And it does seem like the worms like it, but I wouldn't want to have anything sort of clumped together and inaccessible. Alright, let's get these little guys off to the side. Look at them all. They like the chestnut. That seems to be clear. I can't remember now. I don't know if we just built a big sandwich. Because here you can see leftover bits of cantaloupe rind, I believe, here. And whether we're still going to see bits of asparagus maybe, or apple. I think it was all just sort of a blended together mush down here anymore. Maybe there was still a couple larger pieces of sort of a lasagna layer class paper. Although, wait a second, we never got to the second bottom layer yet, did we? Is that what I'm excavating here? This looks like apple. Oy, oy, oy. Well, stuff is getting beaten up pretty good. The worms seem to be treating it as a food object, which is really the idea after a while. In the beginning, I guess it serves as good bedding, but in the end, it all ends up in their bellies, or in their gizzards, or whatever. And then going down, this is just that combination of sifted out bedding fragments that we found in the cocoon nursery, or in the castings batch that we put into storage. There was the leftover bits and pieces of other foods that we saw. That's why I thought if we collected up some of that stuff, if we stick to this concept of keeping all of our leftovers down here in this bottom layer, it'll continue to be a real popular spot as it is right now. And we could just contribute a little bit to it with these things that we found while we were picking through. Seems like the best place for us to put all leftovers at this point, if that's kind of the leftover layer, the bottom. Now, I'm feeling like I could squeeze in a little bit of coffee. And I'm going to do it too, because I got to get rid of this stuff. I'm going to shoot up to the kitchen now and go grab what I've got. And then we could return to this in a moment and get these guys fed. I'll give them the coffee, but not the filters. I'll set the filters aside, use them at a different time. But I think that what we can do is that we can give them this. The paper can go in as a lasagna layer. I think using it as a top covering anymore is not really a sensible idea anymore. Alright, we shouldn't really fiddle with this. I think we've really got to be prepared to put it into service and leave it at that. Otherwise it's going to self-destruct. So now, what the heck happened to all the chestnut? We didn't really set them aside. They must have all just kind of rolled down into here and got blended in. So they're now just part of the leftover layer, I believe. I did kind of smush a few of them. That's probably going to help a lot too, but somehow I feel like regardless, whenever we come back in here at some point, maybe in another couple weeks or so, chances are we're not going to see any leftovers of that stuff. So, alright, whatever. Let's get on with applying all of this coffee. Somehow it did seem like a bit much. I don't know why. Maybe it is. I don't know. Whatever. I think they can handle it. This is really starting to dwindle down to being one of their last feedings, you know, because this goes in as feeding number 14. And if I could squeeze in a little bit more food, if it's going to take a little longer anyway for a lot of this bedding material to break down over time, then perhaps we can still come back in here with some sort of fast composting type food items that we can continue to supplement their diet with while they continue to break down all the bedding leftovers. I don't know, to me this coffee just seems like it's got a better chance if it's sort of blended into the surrounding materials. There's all kinds of weird stuff in here. No idea what that was. Some of it might be like clumped together pieces of paper, which I don't like. Which I prefer to try to break apart here and there if I can when I see it. So that's going to sort of be our foundation layer anymore. But I believe we're going to start off with utilizing what's left of this piece of newspaper as the lasagna layer for this. A brand new piece of paper for lasagna layer. Awesome. So, I mean, some of it really is. This stuff is a little bit dry around the edges, but this stuff here, definitely damp, heavily worked, nibbled away quite considerably, and I would think it's going to get even more worked by being down here where the food and all the action is. We'll leave these as sort of folded over, double layer in these spots. Might take a little bit longer to break down, but probably not. I mean, look at that stuff. It's falling apart under its own weight. So guess what's coming in as the next layer? Yep, you guessed it. More coffee. I believe this is the one I just took out of the machine. Still a little bit warm. Okay. This, what do we mix with this? I wonder if I could just start combining stuff. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of just piling in coffee as a food item of its own. I always feel like it's got a better chance at being worked down if it's sort of mixed in with some surrounding materials or whatever. Maybe if we take some of these large fragments of bedding bits that we encountered here and there, some foodstuffs. This might also just be better as a little bedding fragment to help blend in with all this coffee. It's an interesting layer. Okay, and now what? I think this is the largest piece right here, so we'll save that as sort of our top covering. So we'll bring in what appears to be the second largest piece. Well, I thought this was a piece of it, but I guess not. This piece is barely connected anymore. Oh, I thought this was part of it too. Maybe it all was, and it's all just falling apart in my hands. I wouldn't be surprised. It's kind of an all over the place layer. I don't know what that is. Could that be a banana peel? Kind of looks like it, right? Interesting. So I'm wondering if anything else over here requires, I don't know, getting put back in. I think not. We can just, oh, let's not forget the last batch of coffee. Ugh, so much coffee, but whatever. This should hopefully blend in nicely and get consumed soon. You know, those pieces of chestnut that we saw, definitely popular, definitely getting worked, but I don't think they're going to last much longer. So I think that the coffee is going to come in as a good opportune feeding. Let's drop in some of this stuff we skimmed off the top as a sort of a medium to blend it into. Perhaps it'll help a little bit. This might have been also some leftover fragments of this and that, whatever that fibrous stuff was. So yeah, I'll use these elsewhere. At this point, I believe we'll just start covering up the entire system with nothing more than just that plastic top covering anymore. It is tempted to bring in another piece of fresh newspaper, maybe as a overall top covering. These little guys found the inside of the cardboard. Little sneaky hideout spot. So let's let them have it. What happened here? Did I bury our cardboard piece? I believe I did. Look how big it is. It comes all the way down to here. Alright, very nice. One more use for this top covering cardboard. Actually, it is the most intact piece, so it'll probably just continue being used. Not sure how that newspaper is going to do. I don't think it's going to do very good at all. It's probably going to get eaten up. But that's what we want. We want the worms working all this stuff down. And I think as long as you pour through the material and you still find large fragments of bedding everywhere, it makes sense just to kind of keep feeding, keep the action moving, keep the moisture up, let them break it all down over time. But those foods that I add from now on are probably all going to be kind of fast foods. I'm assuming that the coffee's going to go pretty quick in here. And when we come back, it might be even difficult to distinguish it from the surrounding materials. So next time we come in here, it'll probably be some sort of a melon or pumpkin or something that's going to break down pretty quickly. But I think we're done here. Just trying to bring everything to a sort of a level top surface here. The moisture is so good. The coffee we just added is not going to improve moisture or increase moisture, but that's fine. If we felt like we needed more moisture and it wasn't being delivered by the food we're adding, we could have always sprayed some in, but here it's really not necessary. This piece of plastic's doing a terrific job holding the moisture down within the system. These red bags, they tend to reach from end to end in this direction, but on these two sides, there's always this gap about as thick as my finger on both sides, which I'm always surprised to find nice and damp. So I guess when you're this far along at this point, 133 days, it's getting up there in age, but it's taken feedings well. I've got a room to work, so who knows how long we'll keep going with this one. It might just keep chugging along. But we might not wait 2 weeks before we check in. Maybe we'll come back in here a little bit sooner, 7 or 10 days. They could probably handle it. Maybe they'll be delighted to get some sort of a yummy treat like pumpkin or something. Alright everyone, that's it for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.